Welcome to the Real View podcast, where Ohio Realtors connect you to innovators and influencers, keeping you with the real view of real estate. Whether you're a broker, agent, first-time homebuyer, industry leader, or just happen to stumble upon our podcast today, you can expect to hear tips, tools, tricks, interesting information, and so much more from the experts in Ohio's real estate game. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Real View podcast. I am your host, Allison Wiley. Joining me today, our special guest is Marjorie Adam. She is the principal broker and owner of Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate Pathways. She's a realtor and team lead of Marjorie Adam's team in Charlottesville, VA. Marjorie, welcome onto the show. We're so happy to have you.
Thanks for having me. I really am excited to do this.
Yeah, and you're a seasoned principal broker in the greater Charlottesville area. You're a business coach for realtors, local real estate expert. Seems like you have a really good pulse on the industry and what the heck is going on these days with our never-ending and never-changing real estate market. So we're going to get into all of that, what you're seeing with your clients, how we can really make the most of a market that seems to just be fluctuating so much, constantly changing, and you have some really great tips and ideas and stuff for us to think about as we try to navigate a changing market and how we can really take advantage of that and make sure our business is aligned with all the changes happening. But before we get started in that, I would like to hear a little bit more about you. Could you share with us a little bit about yourself, how you got started in real estate, and a bit of what you do now?
Yeah, so I actually started 30 years ago. So I came right out of college and got into real estate because my mom was a realtor, which was ironically the reason I said I'd never get into real estate. But I did and joined her, and she just had such a warm business. She was kind. Unfortunately, we lost her. She passed away with complications of Parkinson's. But she was the realtor that was relationships, right? Champagne lunches. I thought everyone did this. So we would go to champagne lunches all the time. I was shocked that this just wasn't what everyone did, but she just had such a tie into the community. Her clients loved her. And I thought, gosh, this is how I really want my business to be. This warm kind of driven business. And so she started heading towards retirement. My business was growing. My brother came in and joined me. So he's part of the team. And we've sort of just kind of morphed from there. And we're a very small team, always will be. And I grew up in the Charlottesville, Virginia area, kind of lived all over the country, came back here and started as a student in coaching pretty much when I started in business. So really have always been coached or mentored. Started a national coaching program back in 2008, became a coach in 2014, and just have kind of coached realtors since then. But my business is real estate, right? I am a full-time realtor. That is what I do. So every day I am, helping clients buy and sell homes. This isn't something I did 20 years ago. So I'm in the trenches every single day, learning as much as I ever have.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that that's really special when we have coaches who, are actively practicing and, are speaking from experience or living and breathing it and, can share the same struggles and the same successes, that everyone is going through.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really special, that you're able to do both and bring along other agents, with you. I think that that's really great. And, congrats on such an amazing career and using your mom as an inspiration. I think that's awesome. And I think in some of the suggestions you have for us, you can, that shines through on some of your what I feel like from hearing you say, what your mom's kind of perspective and approach was still valid today. And it's still a part of you and your strategy and what makes real estate great. So I love that.
Yeah.
So let's get into it. Tell us kind of from your perspective, what you're seeing right now. The market's kind of shifted again. What are you seeing? Break down the market for us right now. What you're experiencing, maybe mention some trends, what you're experiencing when you work with your, mentorees. Where's the market at right now? And what's the shift that kind of happened?
So I think it's important. I'm in Charlottesville, Virginia, right? So my perspective, of course, is here. I will also say we're recording this kind of mid-February. So we had a major snowstorm here. A lot of the country did. So I will say that, January was sort of starting up and then we sort of all died for about 3 weeks. Not much happened. So that's absolutely a part of what the market is right now. I think we experienced a pretty slow in general fall going through winter. So the days on the market, and I think nationally the trend is the same, really grew. And so, it was kind of a lackluster, slower. We did quite well with the clients who needed to buy, but a lot of homes sort of sat. And as we came into this year, the question is, with rates, I think rates are not bad. What, 6.2, let's say, hovering around there. I think people are still waiting for them to come down a little bit, but I do see that we're getting a lot of calls from those buyers that have waited and waited. So kind of the rates come down maybe enough. Inventory still tough. So I think that's the biggest thing. Not enough inventory on the market. I also think, as my clientele has always been referrals, past clients. And so they were moving every, let's say, 5 to 7 years. And so you had a fairly significant, move rate within your database. So if I have a database, let's say 500 local families, I can count on a significant portion of those people moving. Well, now, as it's stretched into people sitting for 14 years, which is the national average, obviously those people that aren't moving as often, right? So that obviously affects inventory and listings. So we've really had to think about, well, if we'll call them my bread and butter, but my families that would move over and over aren't moving, then I've got to replicate that business. So the biggest shift has been, we call it the golden handcuff, right? They're in their home at a 3% interest rate. They often, as you know, during COVID spent way over asking. So while they've got some equity, frankly, that payment differential is not attractive. So really looking at, okay, how has that shifted? And then for the clients who did move or all their friends moved during the hype of, I can put it on the market, do nothing, and I'm going to sell it for 100,000 over asking with 62 offers and I can stay until the end of time, right?
Yeah.
That's not the case anymore. And so I think the big shift is, how do we talk to people? How do we really educate clients so they're really clear on what the market is now, not what they hoped it was or what it used to be? Because we all know my house is better than my neighbor, right? So, so I think the biggest thing is, like, how do we really talk to these people in a way that, we're not kind of just saying words that, oh, we're normalizing. I do love that. We're in a normalizing market and no one knows what that means. So I think really
It's a normal market.
well, I mean, I'm 30 years in and I'm not sure what's a normal market. I've seen super high highs. I've seen super low lows. I've carried 50 listings when nothing was moving. So what is a normal market, right? But I think right now we got to really be clear on, okay, so what's our strategy as realtors? How do we talk to clients? How do we talk to potential clients? Not to like scare them out of a market, but to also give them like, here's the reality of today. That's our biggest job right now.
Yeah, I think so too. And, one of the things that I think you mentioned is that how educated clients are right now, or at least like may think that they are. I mean,
Right.
Google's at the tip of our fingertips. We have chat now. We can ask, hey, what's the status of the market, and get, a response spat out to us in, less than 30 seconds. And educating our clients and educating them in the right way that's meeting those expectations. I think you said that, and that's clear. Have you found that kind of there is like a major need for that like, yes, while our clients are more educated, that there's still stuff that they are relying on us for, and that there's still stuff we need to make sure we're communicating to them?
Yeah. So I think there's also the broad market versus the local market. That's the biggest thing, right? So
Yeah.
market trends. So, they watch the news and it says inventory in the nation has done X, or, well, we live in a micro market. So even in my town of Charlottesville and the surrounding areas, downtown might be different than north of town. One neighborhood pricing model is completely different than the surrounding neighborhoods. So we got to understand the micro markets, and we have to understand trends. Now, they can go on Zillow, which gosh knows, sometimes it's right, sometimes it's really wrong. So yes, they have data, right? So they can say, Zillow says my home is worth this. I went in chat and it said this. The best is when they go in chat to ask questions, what they should ask us. I love that. But they can't be more educated than us. I think, in a lot of times they think they are. And in some ways, depending how they're engaging with it. But I think the trends are really important, right? So I think knowing, again, like even in the last 60 days. So I think we've got to really boil it down to now local. What has happened in the last 60 days. It doesn't matter what your neighbor's house sold for a year ago, or frankly, even last June. What's happening right now? What are the days on the market today? Right. So, and they're way higher than people expect. So I actually looked up Ohio stats because you're in Ohio.
Yes.
So if you look in Ohio, like today, now again, you're all in different parts of Ohio. But the average days on market for the state is between 23 and 58 days, depending on the region. That's way higher. And so there's definitely inventory trends, apparently, right? So obviously pockets, but it's, in chatting this, going on chat, right? Affordability being a top concern. Gosh, I bet that's everywhere.
Yeah.
And then in depending on areas, right? So 55% basically of homes selling under asking price. So those are just some local, right? And so if I take it to Charlottesville, we've got about 65% selling below asking price. Our current list to sell ratios in the Charlottesville area are 97.6 and in the county 98.4. Still good, but not 102, right? So I think if we look at that, we've got how much did the inventory in your area grow in January? It should be about a third, at least 34% because of January. But we've got to really be knowing, okay, what does that mean to you? What are the days on the market today? How many people are active on the market right now that have been on the market for 80 days? And then you think you're going to go out and go way above them. That's not going to work. So I think being really clear on and being able to explain to them a strategy behind, not just here's your price. I'm sure you can get that. It's the strategy behind it with the hyper-local, really recent stats.
Yeah, that's so important. And, you mentioned like, hey, we need to be updating this with like that 60 days worth of data. Like, so these buyer and seller consultation presentations should be updated that frequent, if not even more.
Yeah. When you're meeting with the clients, I think, so one of the big things I talk about all the time, and I know a lot of people do, is show, don't tell. Like, so if you're meeting with a buyer client, I think there is a full consultation required, right? So on Zoom, in person, those are the two options. Zoom is only if they can't, they live too far away. In person is what we do. So that's a requirement if you're going to work with a buyer. So if someone says, hey, just meet me at this house, nope, we're going to have this consultation. First of all, it's now the law that they have to sign something, as we're aware. Please be doing that. But I just feel like, look, we're going to spend our time and my energy and 30 years of expertise, then I want them to commit to working with us. So, but I think as part of that consultation is live searches. Because I think, when we set someone up on an auto email, which is good, right? So they can get that information. I don't care if they crawl Zillow or whatever. I want them, set up with us. But you also want to show them, so, hey, this is the inventory now. This is what has happened in the last 6 straight months. Doesn't mean it'll happen now, but this is what you should expect, right? Like this is what they're actually selling for now. So they need to be educated on being prepared in this current market. Yeah. Our sellers, what happens if they get so many showings? So like marketing plans, listing plans, you can't just throw it on the market. What happens if they get 10 showings or 2 weeks and we don't go under contract? What pre-negotiated step is happening now? So, we've got to get the motivated, realistic clients right now.
Yes. And that's key. That's something that you talked about, is finding the right clients. Who should we be working with? Those qualified clients, the people who, are going to really make the most use of our time, which we all know is extremely valuable. Have you found, what do you coach your agents on in ways to find those motivated clients? Is there a specific type we should be looking for? What's those questions we should be asking, those individuals to ensure that we're finding the best people to work with us right now?
I mean, I think as part of, I always sit with the client and say, look, let's create this scenario, the ideal scenario, which I can't promise, and I'm not going to, but if you've done Ninja, if I could wave a magic wand, it's a great statement. But we have them create their dream home scenario where they write down what they want. And then, okay, what does this look like? What happens if you don't find it? What happens so for a buyer, what happens if, is this a must move? What happens if you don't find a home? We've already re-signed our lease for 2 more years. We don't care. And you're like, ooh, not that I don't appreciate a plan B, right? But like, so what does that look like if this doesn't happen? What, we need to find something by June, which really means by May, which means we need to be searching now, right? So we've got to really take a calendar out, be really specific. But for sellers, like, are you ready to price for the current market value, right? This is what it's bringing. This is what we expect. What happens if you don't sell? Because people that have to move, most people, it's like they're moving for a job. Well, what happens if your home doesn't go under contract?
Right.
What happens if you can't buy another home? And it's not, I don't mean like a scare tactic, but it's realistic. Are you ready to adjust your price after 10 showings or 14 days or whatever it is, if we are not under contract. Or if all of a sudden our competition, gosh forbid, the worst things that happen is all of a sudden everyone else around you starts dropping, and then we're in this race to the bottom. So we've really got to have this strategy. If possible, you write it into the listing agreement, because I promise the seller won't remember. Oh, we didn't talk about that. Oh, yes, we did.
Yep.
But so for me, it's like, it's filtering, right? So it's really asking those questions and then being clear on their why they're doing this, to be able to come back to it, right? Because look, if they really got to go, they got to go. Then we've got, the urgency is there, and we've got to act accordingly in our plan.
Yeah. Setting those expectations kind of from the beginning, it sounds like, is just so key and so helpful.
I think we make a mistake in not, I'm never going to go and have I do have hard conversations, but I think too many of us don't. It's like, we are investing our time and our energy and our staging and our pre-inspections and, our money, frankly, and our marketing into something. And we should have the same goal, right? It's an alignment. You and I both, this is what we want to have happen. It's not, when clients are like, well, I don't have to move. I'm like, cool, I don't have to sell your house, right? Like it shouldn't be this sort of, we should be on the same page on how that's going to happen, and agreement, and what our strategy is to make that plan happen. And I think a lot of us don't spend enough time at the beginning asking enough questions, setting a plan, pulling out a calendar, having that hard conversation. I want to have it then. I don't want to have it when it's now time to adjust the price and go, ooh, we haven't talked about this. But I mean, I think it's better to go into it completely clear expectations.
It is, and it's going to save you so much time, as you mentioned, as you go through the process. Like when you have all of this laid out, clear and concise and understood from the beginning, it's going to save you a lot of time down the road, so you can focus on, finding the right house, finding the right buyers, and really making your clients, dreams happen. So I think that that's a really smart strategy to make sure all of that is laid out and clear, right from the beginning. Another thing you talk about is the 90-day plan, and shifting into this way of thinking. And you kind of mentioned it in the past few years, what we have been, going through. And, we could just put a for sale sign in the front yard, and then we have 10 offers in, 15 minutes. And now we're shifting to this 90-day plan. Talk to us about this 90-day plan, how to shift that thinking, and kind of what that all entails.
So I would say, depending on, so for example, if you're in a market where, like, so let's say Ohio in general is a 23 to 58 days on the market, right? So you might call it a 60-day plan. I like a 90-day plan, showing that, like, we're not just throwing them on the market, but also educating them on, they've got to understand, maybe, will they go under contract in 3 days? Maybe. I mean, again, if it's the best house, the best price, in the best condition, in the best neighborhood, you're probably going to sell quickly still, right? Depending on your markets. But if we don't say, okay, here's our plans, right? So we have our pre-listing launch plan. I'm a big fan of naming things. Because everyone says we all do the same thing. Well, we do, but how do we explain it, and how do we market it into something that makes sense to them? So, right, what are we doing the first 10 days, or what are we doing 5 days before we go on the market, right? So we have obviously photos, all the things everyone does or should do, the videos, the photos, the floor plans, everything we're doing. But then how are we doing, coming soon, or teasers on social? How are we sending a letter to all the neighbors? I know that's old school, but old school still works, right? So new school, old school. What is most important to them? Like, how are we getting those buyers into the home, right? And then making it as accessible as possible, allowing as many showings as we can, and then doing like an audit, right? So if it's been 10 showings or 14 days, we're of course gathering feedback. I also think in saying gathering feedback, it's pretty important to say, I tell every client, I could literally move in with some realtors and I will not get feedback from them. So we're going to do everything we can, call, text, smoke signal, but sometimes it'll be useless or we won't get it, right? Because that is the number one frustration, I can tell you. But like, what are we doing then? Do we have a preset price adjustment? When are we doing open houses if they want open houses, right? So then as time's going on, so as we're heading into, let's say it is the third, fourth week, depending on your market, how are we adjusting verbiage? How are we adjusting the plan? So if we do, are we doing a price drop, or are we offering to buy down a rate? Like, what is the strategy that's going to work on the affordability factor of buyers? Not always just popping the price down. And then again, other social engagement, other reels. How do we do a blog about their house that might attract clients? And so I think going through and having your plan of how many showings, how many days, how we're going to market it, what that next step looks like, how are we getting it out to all the realtors? So I think having this kind of clear plan, and then 30, 60, and 90-day meets. So if they've been on 30 days, you meet. They've been on 60 days, you meet. I think, trying to get price adjustments and everything. Now, sometimes they just can't meet, but then can we meet on Zoom? Like, what's our strategy and what's the next step? How can I give them a recap of what's happened every week, right? Talking to them every week. Here's how many showings you've had. Here's what's gone on in the market around you. I think setting them up on an auto email for a seller so they see what's happening. They see new listings come on. They see things going pending. The more they see the market and they go, ooh, that house sold. And it's not me saying, yeah, look how nice it was, right? So I think the more I can have them as part of this strategy, the better.
I love that. Like, just communicate. It sounds like that's like kind of what this is coming down to. Even setting those expectations in the beginning, sending regular messages and updates throughout the process, laying everything out so it's clear and understood. Hey, here's the process, here's the timeline, here's what it looks like, so everyone's ready to go. I mean, it's so smart, it's so simple. It's really a great strategy to use to make sure everyone's on the same page, so that none of this craziness, or hopefully as little craziness as possible, happens as we're moving through the whole process. So very smart. So we have kind of our current clients, how to find those clients that are motivated, that are going to be the best use of our time. But what about our past clients and those individuals? And you mentioned so much, and this is for many realtors out there, so much of the business is those referrals or past clients. What should we be working on with that relationship as we are in this new pipeline, as we're working with our current? How do we pay attention and still nurture that relationship with our past clients?
So hopefully, and I say hopefully because I coach a lot of people and it's not generally the case. I hate to go super basic, but let's start super basic. So to take care of the past clients means we have to be in touch with the past clients, which means we need to remember the past clients. That means we have a database of past clients. So I coach a lot of people and they'll have these either no database, or they'll have this massive database of anyone that maybe ever contacted them in the last 8 years, whether they reached out to them or not, whether they came in through Zillow or whatever portal, right? But there's no specifics. So step one, of course, is a segmented database with your past clients in it, right? And if you haven't done that, people are like, how do you do it? Tax records, MLS list, right? You can search solds that you've sold. You should go then into the tax records, because if you haven't kept in touch with them, they might have moved. So we got to clean that up. So step one is a really good cleanup. And then step two is really be honest. What's the last communication you had with them? Because I think a lot of people are like, Realtor for life. I heart referrals. I heart them, right? And no communication. So it's like a little weird if it's been 5 years and you're like, here I am. So I think you've got to figure out a way to kind of re-engage with them. I think we need to be there, not just shoving down how many houses we sell. Like I know a lot of, because they don't care, frankly, they just don't. You need to be top of mind when they need to move. But, until their next move, the value we're providing them is any information. So I would tell you, I think if people haven't been doing, I'd start with the CMA, call it an equity report that you do, that you can do an annual review, and you can just reach out and say, been thinking about you, just wanted to share a current market update with the value of your home. And if you have any questions, let me know. So that's kind of more on the business end. I think, birthday cards. I just think there are ways to be engaged with them. This is supposed to be a relationship.
Yes.
If you haven't been in touch with them, you don't call them and ask for a referral. That's awful. But I think for us, we do a lot with our past clients and always have. I think a lot of it has to be personality based on the realtor. So we're doing cooking lessons in our house. My husband is a chef, and past clients come and hang out and get cooking lessons, and we record them. But for some people, like I talked to one person, they're like, that sounds awful. Well, then don't do that.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm like, I'm coming. I'm not even your client. Can I come?
People love it. Right. Like it's a great way to engage with them, entertain them, feed them, have them over. It's very casual. I have 2 big dogs. They'll jump on you. We are not dressing up. Like I live pretty simply. So I think engaging with them in that way, but whether it's, hosting little fun events, or you can do shredding events, or you can do all these things, you can do little things where you drop stuff by. I think re-engaging that relationship with them without spamming them.
Yes.
I think there's a difference between giving them valuable information and then just marketing to them, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
So just a postcard every month on, a home that you sold, probably not what I would do. But so we do letters to them. We highlight other clients to them and their businesses. We do coupons and fun things for birthdays. We do little events. We do community events. So I think it's stuff I love doing. So I think that for me, it's kind of gauge where you are on it, communication you have with them, and then just slowly commit. Because I think we're like, oh, I'm going to call them every month. I wouldn't call them every month, but call them and I'm going to send them a letter and I'm going to send them a birthday card and I'm going to invite them to a picnic and they haven't heard from you in 5 years and they're like, what's happening?
Yeah.
So I think there's this, think about like what relevant information can we give them? So I think clear is equity in their home. If they need a HELOC, how that might work. Home improvements that will add value to their home. So I love like giving them tips. Our clients, it's, who do you need for referrals? We set up this was actually a client of mine came up with this idea. We have this internal database for all of our clients that they can get and give contractor information so that they can have vetted, reputable people to reach out to. So I think what's that kind of microcosm? What community are you trying to create that is not just, I'm here to sell your house. When are you going to move?
Yes. And not just sold, and that's all that you are sending out to people.
I think they see, like, if they engage with you on social media, if they, you want to be in their lives and present, you want them to see you're productive. So, hey, if it's January of every year, if you want to send a cool card with all the homes you've sold and say, thank you so much to our clients, we had such a great year. I think you can do a little endorsement there. But like I said, I not trying to liken us to used car salesmen, but let's do it. Like if I buy a car, I've always used this scenario. So people are like, oh, I've heard this. If I buy a car and then, so I have an Audi, a used Audi, a Q8, I don't even know, it's blue. But if my car salesman sent me a card every month that said I sold 12 cars this month, I sold 11 cars this month, I'd be like, first of all, I'm like, there's 30 days in a month. That doesn't sound like very much, but whatever. But if he sends me something that says this is 20% off an oil change, this is, and then I have all these things, right? Like I'll get in the car and be like, oh, look, I don't know how I made that happen. But if he'd send me little videos that said, that little keypad that I don't touch, there's a little mount like pad. If you do this, this happens. Like, what if he sent me little tips on it? And again, little discounts and hints on the best way to wash it, and sent me like a little rag to like clean my window because then I won't scratch my window. Like those are all things that are beneficial in the ownership of my car. And I'm thinking of them, but I don't care how many cars he sold. So
exactly.
Let's say he invited me to a detailing once a year, right? Like deal on.
That's cool. Yeah.
Best place to get your windshield wiper blades because, they're gone to, what. And then like a little thing in the winter to like scrape my windows. Like those are things that he could even brand that would be valuable to the use of my car, right? Versus look at me. So I think turn that into real estate. What are the tips that help people? How do they save money? How do you help them in their ownership of their home? And then the ones that you want to hang out with. And I don't say that meanly. There's people that I know love me as their realtor. They don't want to hang out. They don't want to come to an event. They're not interested in a happy hour. I probably will not hear from them. I think they hate me. And 6 years later, they're like, we love you. We love everything. It's like we're moving. And I think, God, I haven't heard a word from you. So, right, there's kind of like, we want to be present. We want to be valuable, but we don't want to be spamming.
Yes, absolutely. And I think content is king, when you are able to give your past clients valuable tools, tips, like you said. I was like, oh my gosh, like how to winterize your home. Like, hey, here's the best snow removal, like people in the neighborhood, like, like you said, we just had a horrible winter and, all of that, like what should we set our furnace at? What's some good HVAC, people that we can call out to come do our tune-ups for our, HVAC, stuff like that is so valuable. And the great thing about a home is there's so much that, there's so much there that you can help people with.
And we go through stuff, right? Like think about, I have clients that have terrible insurance claims and they didn't have this rider. And I think, oh, I got to make sure all my clients have this rider, right? So I think in our day-to-day operations, we see, or we're like, wow, the new trend in kitchens is this. Don't know if it'll last, but how interesting is that? So it's like, some of it's fun, like decorating tips and like hacks. Some of it's really important. Some of it's value wise. Some of it is like, how many times do we go to someone's house and they spend $100,000 on boulders, right in
Yeah.
the yard, but their kitchen and bath looks like 1927. And you're like, well, that's unfortunate. So like, how can we advise them, right, on, not only loving their home, but most people's largest investment? How can we really maximize that?
Yeah, that's just great. When we think about beyond the transaction, beyond the closing date, there's so much out there that we can do, and great advice. So I want to thank you again, Marjorie, so much for joining me, for all of this fantastic advice. There's so many notes, so many good things. I'm like, I want to, note that. I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to come back to that. So thank you so much for sharing all of this with us today, for all that you do for our real estate community, and congrats on your successful business and coaching career.
Well, thank you so much. This was fun. Anytime.
And to all of our listeners, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll be back with you next week. Talk to you then.
Thank you for listening to The Real View. That wraps up today's episode. You can keep up with the latest on the podcast at ohiorealtors.org/therealview and on Apple or Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Have questions, comments, or suggestions? We want to hear from you. Email us at podcast@ohiorealtors.org. We'll see you next time.
This episode of The Real View is sponsored by the Ohio Housing Finance Agency. The Ohio Housing Finance Agency offers affordable mortgage rates, down payment assistance, and homebuyer education to prepare homebuyers for long-term success. To unlock these resources for your client, make sure they're working with an Ohio Housing Finance Agency approved lender. There's more than 140 lenders throughout Ohio. Learn about the Ohio Housing Finance Agency's programs and view the list of approved lenders at ohiohome.org. Homeownership is part of your client's future.